2023 meeting of the Metro Human Relations Commission to begin. I forgot the word. Okay, we have a lot. I know I say that every time, but we do have a lot, so I'm going to get moving. So this is the call to order. We have, I guess, Ashley, are you taking note of everyone in attendance? Thank you so much. So I am confirming that we do indeed have a quorum. It is wonderful to see all your faces here in the first meeting of 2023, and it's a really good group too, so I'm really, really excited about that. Thank you for being here. I appreciate it. Again, please review minutes. We had plenty of time to look at those and give any feedback or edits that you might have. If not, I am ready to hear a motion to approve. Any seconds? Thank you. Any abstentions or against? Fabulous. Then the minutes have been approved. We're going to move quickly to the financial update. Not much, I don't think, has happened there. Davey?
Other than our budget is extremely tight. We don't have space for anything extraordinary. We had to pull from various pools to make up a part-time position into a full-time. And as they have continually reconciled our budget, it's tight.
Getting tighter. Thank you for that. Again, I know I acknowledged this last time, but I have been so impressed with your ability to get staff and get things, expand things despite how tight it all is. So you are incredibly innovative and creative in doing that, and I appreciate it. And we will do, I think, some exciting staff updates after we do new business, because we do have a new team and new faces around the table, so very excited about that. So thank you. Again, I'm going to pass over to Davey because I don't know this update, but it sounds like not a great update, but a mobile diversity seminar update.
The MHRC, this probably goes back 10 years, sought forever to get this mobile diversity tour as part of the DEI training for Metro police recruits. Right now, the police do their own implicit and explicit bias training. We've advocated for years that they need to have people from those disciplines do that type training. So about 6 years ago, we were able to start what was called the Mobile Diversity Tour. And some of you took part in the one we did. And so we were just notified by the commander of training that they're going to go another way and that they're not going to be using us anymore. And I'm in the process, so I don't have an answer as to why yet. And we're also in the process of wanting to talk with Chief Drake about what is the basis of this decision. I firmly have held the position that where there is a discipline, I think the community would be better served by individuals from those disciplines doing that training. Because my fear is that training such as that's given by law enforcement individuals are nuanced to where maybe the theoretical concerns that ground certain type trainings can just totally get lost. So as of now, we're not doing any more MDS trainings, and hopefully next month I'll be able to update you as to why and where we're going from here. But we fought long and hard to get this established, so it's kind of, as I shared with the commander, it was disheartening.
When did you find out?
Found out about a week ago.
And we have budget allocation for this from the government, so.
Yes, we in fact pay for it.
Yeah.
They don't even pay for it out of their $230 million budget. We pay for the training.
Is it paid to the?
No, it's like to the contractors, the lunch, the venue, all that stuff that we do. Because we have like people come in and talk to them, and we have lunch that we pay, all that stuff. It's mostly, yeah.
I was, for those of you who don't know, I participated in that day, and it was extremely, extremely impactful, and built relationships with several individuals that I did not know prior to that. So would maybe a conversation beyond just you to show that someone who has vested interest in how this process takes place and how it forms relationships in the community to help build better policing practices and greater goodwill all around? Could that be something that in your toolkit you use as you move forward to have that conversation with him?
I'd be open to any type of assistance. Ultimately, my plan is not only to ask the chief, but I think, to me, this is a step back in police training. I know that they're going to have what they would call their logical replacement, but to me, I'm just thinking that sometimes the disruption that honest conversation has, they want to take that away. And in our respect of everybody, we wanted to actually have honest conversations around issues of racial and cultural difference. And that's the only thing I could think of that would be the reason why they would choose not to use us anymore. So yes. What I'll do, Commissioner, is I'll just send an email updating you as to where I am and the other commissioners, and then you can weigh in and go from there. And I'll include Commander Widener's email in there also.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead. Gerlinda Pratik.
I was just gonna say that, I think things that we've heard from law enforcement over and over is the want and desire from them to build trust in the community. I think we hear that a lot, as a talking point of theirs. And so I think it's figuring out kind of like, you know, where that, by taking this step of kind of not using us, of how that's going against the talking point they're using. And so I think also just figuring out the Venn diagram of their needs versus our need. Because I think what I'm a little nervous about is the framing of that, like, they may be thinking like, you know, this is just a thing that, you know, if the amateur, like, they think that we need them more than they need us, when it's really more mutually exclusive. And so I want to make sure that that framing is understood in your discussions. And so just wanting to name that publicly as well, that this isn't just like a charity favor that they're doing for us to get this training, that there's actual value and some real things that can help them be better law enforcement officers and keeping more Nashville, you know, civilians safe, and really, you know, making sure that they understand that. I'll pass it over.
Ditto. And I wanted to ask too that as we're inquiring, I think it's important, it would be important for me to know what they're going to replace it with, what they plan to replace it with. Because I mean, there are fabulous anti-racism DEI programs out there that probably, you know, that would be fabulous. My suspicion is that's not what they're going for. But I would like for us, I think we have a right as the commission to ask what they're eyeing as a replacement. Because as we all know, we can do the kumbaya, everybody hold hands kind of stuff that's just required to make everybody feel good and not really challenge implicit and explicit bias in systems that we're dealing with. And so I think I would like to see that as part of our negotiation. We need to know what they're replacing it with.
be able to say, here's what I gained from going through this opportunity with the commission, in addition to commissioners who's been able to do it as well. That advocacy may be, really important.
Okay, and I'll also send you comments. We take pre-screening comments, and then at the end, we get comments. And they go both ways. And when you sit in the class, you can see how it does disrupt. The session before the last session was done with a lateral training class, which lateral class for them is people coming from other jurisdictions with previous law enforcement experience. They were totally disruptive. They influenced the initial recruits in their response to one recruit had picked up the mic and he looked behind him at one of the laterals and he put the mic back down. The laterals were making really abrasive comments about questioning really the legitimacy of what we were doing. Some even felt like that they were tired of this. So we spoke with them after about the mixing of laterals with the recruits, because they had folk who had served 15 years. One guy was from New York City, and he even made a remark in there that he moved to Tennessee, and I'm paraphrasing. They said he moved down here to Tennessee to get away from a mayor who says he gets up every day to kick police officers' ass, which was taken out of context what the mayor said, because the mayor of New York is a previous police officer. So he says that in that space. And again, I say that their responses are to the legitimacy of what we want to talk about. And that, to me, if it's not disruptive and if it doesn't shift power, I question it being real DEI work. And so that's a space that we've agreed to set in. And I think for some of them, it's problematic. So that'll be something else. We'll send some of those replies. Because we give them the post and the pre. And you'll notice over time that when you, like, they ask some questions like, what is your knowledge of the Muslim community or whatever? Well, they'll write that they're all terrorists. I mean, these are folk who are in police recruit training, that they'll actually say that. So, and then you can read into what some of them say to get a sense of where some of them are coming from.
The only thing I'll add to that, sorry, Dan, did you want to say something?
I was just
Go
going to
ahead.
ask a question. Do we get is there a group of folks that do attend this and come to it every year outside of the cadets and recruits and the laterals that are perhaps not enjoying it, i.e. people that see value in it that are just in the ranks of our police force?
It's an introductory training, so it's
it's
like
only
when you
newbies.
come in,
Yeah, it's just for the
No
basic
repeats.
class.
Gotcha. Okay.
But I'm sure among those that first came into the Corps, they found some value in it. It was just this class was disrupted because it had people that had their entrenched views and felt empowered to, bulldoze a training, whereas someone who's new would probably just be a little bit more respectful. The only other thing I could say is, two things come to mind. If it's a contract and they feel like they're getting rid of a contractor, because that seems like how they're dealing with it with you, I think the context of, and you maybe know, but the context, maybe talking to Mel about how this was brought about, because it feels like it's a requirement somehow. And if we are not the required partner, like under what terms can they really dismiss us?
Because of the police department and the way the charter defines it, everything gets approved or not approved by the chief. they meet the Tennessee post requirements for their training, but they exceed it by probably 100 or more hours. So they have their post-certified portion of their training, but they've extended it, and we're part of that extension.
Okay, so that, and then, yeah, if they're gonna replace it, so are they not even, they may not even replace it because.
No, they said that they are.
Gonna replace it.
Yes.
So they're gonna replace it with a check-the-box contractor or organization or
I have
whatever?
no idea.
Let's assume. I guess what I'm saying is, because I'm kind of getting used to trains having left the station by the time we're notified about these things. So, how can we strategically, at least if it's not us, influence how, and maybe we can't. I mean, can we influence how that training is taking place so that these cadets do actually benefit
Well,
somehow?
the only way we influenced how that training
if
took
it's us.
place was the way in which the mobile diversity tour was originally set up. As part of that discussion, it was part of starting out asking MMPD to allow others to do not only the MDS, there's a, let me see here, I actually have it here. They have, this is from their basic police curriculum. Under the excuse me here. Under their human relations section, post requires 30 hours and they have 47 hours. Of that, they have the mobile diversity tour, which is our piece, 8 hours. But then they also have implicit and explicit bias training, which is done by it's diversity and inclusion. That's 1 hour. Fair and impartial policing is 8 hours. Hate, crime, orientation, and procedure is 1 hour. And then in another section they have
What I'm thinking is if we need to, well, we can talk about this, well, this will be in a conversation later, but if we need to take some sort of action on this sooner than the next meeting, maybe we can discuss this like in an XCOM meeting or something like that. Because it feels, yeah. Yes, Ariel.
Just thinking about if this is happening, maybe one productive thing that we could do is, which may have been done already, but an analysis of the impact of the program, a little bit of its history into, a couple page brief. This could be given to the police, to the next operator, and potentially even a letter to the editor on what we've learned with the first ever mobile diversity clinic, and so that we can, in a positive, productive way, identify the challenges that we've seen in the city, but also the beautiful things that come of it. And it's a way, I think, to historically mark what has been a really, I think, powerful, innovative tool, and also give something back to the city that maybe they didn't know was actually happening.
I like that.
I love that. To sort of publicly document the learnings and the impact. I love that. Yes. And we're going to talk about how all that can happen in a little bit. But yeah, like Amy did for today's meeting, anybody can draft a statement or whatever and send it to Davy for us to look at the next meeting. So, yeah. But she would need, I guess, the data to be able to write such a thing. But that would be great. Okay, I'm going to move on to the next bit because we do have it done. Okay, so I think Ashley's going to update us on inclusivics, and that's why she's got the screens up. Is that right? Okay, so everybody can look behind them.
Let's see if, all right. I hope you like my elaborately designed slides. Thank you, thank you. So I've got quite a bit of information here. I'll go through it pretty quickly. Feel free to tell me if I'm going too fast or too slow. I don't know how much time we want to have for this, but maybe about 15 minutes. So I'm going to give an overview of what inclusivics is, if you're not familiar, share some preliminary findings, and just talk about what we're doing moving forward. So especially for those folks who aren't new on the commission, we created an original project research report called Inclusivics in 2015 that was really designed to look at the workforce of Metro general government employees and to understand sort of the demographics, salaries, and what that information looks like. I put some of the preliminary findings from that 2015 report on here, but as you might guess, it showed disparities across race and gender. And the impact that we had back in 2015 was that the mayor created a diversity task force, and now we have an eventually a DEI office was established. That's not us, but a different department within Metro. And so right now it's 8 years later, and we're doing an update to kind of see what those trends are since then, with just, again, similar research questions as we had back then. So I'm going to run through what some of those preliminary things have told us. This is roughly the data that we received from Metro HR. So this is not data that I went out and collected. It's secondary data. It's existing data. There's a bunch of things here, but again, preliminary, we're interested in race, gender, salary, departments, that sort of thing. So here we go. When we look at our workforce by race, it's a little awkward for me to have to keep looking back. These are our total number of employees over those 8 years. And so the top line shows our total number of employees. You see we've grown by about 1,000 employees over the 8 years. The yellow line, which I know is hard to read up there, shows that we have predominantly white workforce. The green line is Black or African American workers, and then the ones jumbled down at the bottom, it's hard to see what those are, so I've broken them out here specifically on this second slide. So it's our Hispanic folks, Asian or Pacific Islander, American Indian or Alaskan Native, or people that identify as 2 or more races. And so you see, you know, these are small numbers. They're all trending upwards, especially for Hispanic or Latino folks, but they're still very small numbers when compared to our full workforce here. So that's kind of everybody that we've got over 8 years. You can see it's about 75,000 employees. So that's sort of everybody, no matter how long you've worked here, if you've been an employee for 1 year, 10 years, 30 years. What this shows is I wanted to see what is the racial demographics of our most recent new hires. And so the bars here are clustered by the year of employees that were hired each year. So I've clustered them by race. So white folks at the far left here, the blue bar represents white employees hired in 2015. The orange bar represents white employees hired in 2016, all the way to the maroon bar, which is white employees hired in 2020. So you see, these are trending arguably the way we would like to see, where we're hiring fewer white people over time. We're hiring more Black or African American folks over time. When we go to our Hispanic or Latino hires, they've increased, but it seems pretty stagnant in the last few years. And then we see smaller numbers when we look at the other categories. What the lines show, I've got the label, which it's small, but using census data from the most recent American Community Survey, 64.4% of Davidson County residents are white. So it shows the comparison of our hiring of employees compared to the county at large. And so for our newer hire of employees, white folks are actually underrepresented when compared to the county at whole. And then you can see for each racial category. So that's kind of who we've got. Let's look at what are we paying our folks? So this shows a gap in salaries by race. I know, again, these are small labels. You probably can't read them that well. But over time, salaries are going up for everyone. It's good. That's what we want to see, right? But the orange line are white employees at top with the average salary of $70,000. The line just under it is, I'm getting,
Asian.
did that work? Did that change it? Okay. I keep getting pop-ups on my computer. I'm not sure why. Is Asian or Pacific Islander or, oh, it's strange. Well, here we go. We got a transcript, accessibility, right? So you can read the labels here, but obviously what stands out the most here is the yellow line is our Black workers and the green line is Hispanic workers. So there's a considerable wage gap by race there. And so, so this just shows the statistical significance of this. It shows that there is a significant difference between comparing white to Black workers, Hispanic to white workers, and people of two or more races to white workers. This is just to show that the statistics back up what we see visually in the graph. So again, that was everyone overall, and then again, similar to our overall counts, I wanted to see if those wage differences are present for the people that we've most recently hired in the last 8 years. Again, you see salaries going up over time for most all categories of the different races here. But what this shows is that there's still a significant wage gap between white and Black workers, but not between white and other races. Again, I'm going to just keep moving along. When we look at gender, this is our total count of employees, so we hire more males than females. And this is, again, of the people that we've hired in the last 8 years. We don't see the difference or the gap quite as large, but you do see that we are still overall hiring more men than women. I will also say about the gender, again, this is data that was given to us by HR. It's only 2 options, men and women, male and female. So it's not the most inclusive data collection, which I do want to emphasize. When we look at salaries by, yeah.
Sorry, can I ask a quick question about
Yes.
the last one? Is just, do you know the county, just male to female ratio? Like 55, no, when you die?
This one, for everyone overall, it's like 65-35%. Is that what you were asking?
No, like
No.
Davidson County.
Oh, we do have county. I have not gotten to that one yet. I'll just keep moving us. So we have a gender pay gap. The green line on the bottom shows what that amount is year after year between men and women. And so in 2015, the gap was 5,300, and the gap in 2022 is 5,700. So while it's not changing greatly, it has gotten worse. These are the average starting salaries for new hires by gender. And so you can see men year after year their starting salaries are higher. That's what that tells us. Again, I'm moving fast through this. And so this is just the statistics behind those 2 graphs. We see a statistically significant difference between all males and all females. But when we look at males hired in this most recent year and females hired in this most recent year, there is not a statistically significant difference. But there is when we look at everyone overall. I think that says more things about like retention and promotion probably, but that's what's got. So I just have a few slides left. When we look at the departments, we have data from 51 different departments. These are all Metro General Government, so this does not include MNPS teachers, also does not include the airport or MTA and a few other agencies that are dealt with separately. This one's really small, but this just shows the size of the department so that we know like how many people we're talking about. And so police is at the top as the largest department with just under 2,000 employees, followed by fire, followed by sheriff. And so those departments that are traditionally thought of as traditional public safety are our largest 3 departments, followed by water, parks, health, public library, public works. So you get to more of like the core functions and the core functions of the city, all the way down to some very small departments that we've got. I'm not going to try to explain this one because it's hard to see, but this is just a breakdown of the race of employees by department, which is something that we can look at for departments that we're most interested in. So it's easy to see what departments are predominantly white, what departments are predominantly black or people of color or non-white. And then we can similarly look at it by gender.
Ashley, would you
Yes.
back up? I think you moved it a little bit quick. I think you can see on there what departments are predominantly white, but also the particular departments that are predominantly black. Metro Action, social services, I think those are distinctions that I didn't want to get lost, but
Yeah, and the Office of Family Safety is also about 50% black. And yeah, if you want me to spend more time on slides, I'm kind of flying through on purpose, but I can definitely slow down. But yeah, predominantly white, police, fire, what else here? Emergency communications, ITS tech, the Planning Commission, and legal are all predominantly white departments. We can also look at the gender composition within departments, and so blue is male, the orange is female, so predominantly male, police, fire, public works, ITS.
Ashley,
Yeah.
I did look up, I don't know how accurate, but just to answer Pratik's question, we are actually 51.73% women, female in this county, not counting for non-binary and the gender spectrum, and 48% male. It was 45 women and 55, yeah. So that's important to note.
Oh, sorry, Pratik, I misunderstood. I have the county where our employees live. I thought that's what you were asking, yeah. Yeah. Okay.
If it's representative or not, yeah.
Right. Yeah, so there's a lack of gender parity in our workforce, right? Yeah. So again, this is gender. There are some clear departments that are predominantly male, others that are predominantly female. This doesn't include all the departments. It's just what I thought could reasonably go on a slide, and it's still crowded. This again is a comparison of our departments. Imagine this as like one long list instead of me breaking it up side by side, but this is the median salary of full-time employees by department, just looking at this most recent year. And so the median department, or the department with the highest median salary is Metro Legal, which is coming in at about $107,000 as the highest median salary, followed by Justice Integration Services, the Metro Council, which is not council members, but it's staff. I'll also say I excluded elected officials from this analysis because those are people that the voters put in those positions and not people that were hired through our traditional hiring structures. The mayor's office, ITS, internal audit, planning commission are all among there at the top. At the bottom, some of our lowest salaried departments, staff of the juvenile court clerk, the Metro Action Commission, so one of our largest service providers within Metro, the Convention Center Authority, the public library, staff of the county clerk's office. So again, I'm reading from the bottom there.
Actually, I might be jumping ahead, but have we made any comparisons of like the race, like Metro Action Commission we saw was one of the highest, has the most black employees, and yet it's one of the most lowest paid, like, has those comparisons been made, and I'm jumping ahead?
yeah, you're jumping ahead.
All right.
Well,
I just got back, all right? Just trying to-
I was jumping with you, so thank you.
Yeah, you're jumping ahead, Commissioner Pratik, yes.
Yeah, here, I've only got 6 slides left, so I don't think I have a slide exactly what you're asking for. But there's many questions that we could ask and answer, and I've just selected a few here, and it's yeah. But we can do analyses that look at those things that, control for factors like department, gender, race when we're doing these things to show if there's a significant difference between what we're looking at. This is just something that I did because I think when we're thinking about, economic research and wages and equity, I'm going to be most interested at who's at the bottom and who's at the top. And so using the median as my variable that I focused on, these are the lowest 10% of the department's median salary and the highest 10% of the department's median salary. So I kind of just read several of them out loud on that other chart. But so what this says, let's look at one that I think is interesting is the Convention Center Authority. And so the median salary is $45,000 there. That's among the bottom 10%. Also has one of the lowest paid workers in Metro, which is $31,200. I could tell you exactly what the title is of that position, in the database that I've created. But it also has a salary that's in the top 10% of Metro. And so you can just see that some departments have a very great span between the highest and the lowest.
And that's not a cumulative salary on the right-hand side.
According
that's
to
a
HR,
yearly
this is the
salary.
That's
salary.
an individual's year.
That's an individual salary.
Impressive.
The person that runs the,
Yeah, we know.
yeah.
So it's $369,513.90 if you can't read it from your seat.
So just in light of throwing stuff out there that you might want to look at for the report itself, the question that comes up for me is like, what are the parameters that guide these places? Like, I remember when we were doing our hiring and stuff, like there were some rules around that. And so that's immediately what I think about. It's like, what allows for the great differences in both in low and in high? And I think agencies have control over that to a certain extent is what I'm thinking. And then it gets into some interesting questions. So maybe touching on that in a
Yeah.
paragraph or two.
Yeah, I have a ton of questions when you look at the data, right? And so yeah, I think it's real important when we think about like who's at the bottom, who's at the top. So that's my intention with this slide. And then I just tried to create,
Excuse me.
Yes.
You have a question over here.
Yes.
I'm sorry. Since you excluded Metro Council members from the council office, did you also exclude the mayor's salary from the mayor's office?
Yes.
I
all
excluded the
elected
mayor.
officials.
Okay, I'm just checking.
Yes, so it's just the mayor, elected officials. So I've categorized everyone either as yes or no as an elected official, and then I've excluded everyone who's tagged as yes. So we could look at those elected officials in like a separate analysis to see if those demographics are different. Maybe people who rise up to these top positions through being voted on through a popular democratic process, maybe those folks look different than people who rise up to these top positions through more traditional or not traditional hiring processes. I don't have any data to share about electeds right now. So I've just got a couple more slides here. Again, looking at the median salary as the variable that helped me create the last chart, this is the lowest median salary. It's the staff in the juvenile court clerk's office. And just, people like infographics. This is what the staff of the juvenile court clerk, where we have the lowest median salary, what they look like. So our lowest salary there, about just under 38K, the highest salary, 101. And this is the demographics here of the key. So it's kind of mixed, right? It's not predominantly maybe one thing or another. But then when we look at the highest median salary, again, I'm using this from the data that I just showed you, that's our legal department or our law department. Something that stands out, it's really white, and it's more women than men, but mostly white. And you can see the spread of the salary there, where their lowest salary is about 51,000, and it spans up to 211,000 as their highest one. Those are the only profiles of departments that I put together, but I just wanted to sort of like give a flavor of the data that we do have. So that's all I've created for this little preview. So I would say like overall, my summary points here are that there are again, like there were when we first did this, disparities based on race and based on gender. But when we look at the clusters of newer hires in the last 8 years, we're not seeing the disparities as stark as they were before. I think that has to do with a lot of things, like maybe Metro is doing better on diverse hiring. I also think it has to do with retention, promotion, and those are things that we do not have data on. So it's maybe possible to get data on that, but it's not in the data dump that HR did give to me this time. And so this is my last slide. Our tentative next steps, we're gonna finish the report, aiming to have a full draft finished by February. Would love to share more updates with y'all if you are interested in whatever way you want that. And then I think identifying additional audiences for conversations, for, this is only worth doing if we do something with it. And so whether that's like conversations with HR, with council or policymakers, with community organizations or advocates that work around issues of diversity and economic equity. And I didn't put this as a point here on this slide, but because we do have a lot of questions and we have added our, to the capacity of our staff, where we have staff to do things like this now, we might want to think of ways that we can add additional methods onto this to surface richer data than the data that is just given to us by HR. So whether that's doing things like interviews, trying to understand a little better about like the climate of what it means to be a worker at Metro. So that is all I have for you, and I'll hand it back to the chair.
That's a lot. Thank you so much. That's incredible. This is the little team that could, seriously. What do they say? Small but mighty. So thank you so much for that. I guess we could also, as you're meditating on this afterwards, maybe just send further questions to Davey and Ashley, to staff. One of the things that came up, I don't know if you're noting, but like, it was legal generally, nationally, worldwide, scales higher just because of the education, blah, blah, blah. It's like medicine and legal. But what was interesting is that the court workers don't get that same reflection. I understand they may not have those same degrees or whatever, but if we get a couple paragraphs in on that, I think that, and one is predominantly Black comprised and one is predominantly white. So those are some interesting dynamics and may reflect national trends, but important. So thank you so much, Ashley, for doing all that awesome work. And appreciative that HR passed it all over. That's great. And honestly, I did see some great trends. So I just want to, I want to acknowledge that. Metro, all the people of Metro that have worked to change that since the last report, I'm really happy to see. So thank you. Yes, Commissioner.
First, God bless the researcher. Thank you for that. And it's so eye-opening. Is there any way we could share this with Metro employees? Because I think sometimes when they see like, whoa, I'm doing all the work
Yeah.
at the bottom down here and someone else is getting all the money. I think sometimes that a little stirring of the pot from within versus us being agitators, great to be agitators, but it also works when others are seeing the disparities for what they are, and this affects them. So is there any way that we could have public conversations with, you could send me this, and I will send it to a whole bunch of people I know, and they'll get it in the right hands, because many may not even know this information. And then the other thing that I would like to bring up is that even though the information was being supplied to you, how much is that the fox guarding the hen house? I would love to know if there's a way that we could get the information, not necessarily from, is there a third party to authenticate the numbers? Because I got a feeling that those numbers may be even higher than what we're seeing.
Well, not to say I've done a lot of work, but the data that came to HR, this is, you know, me compiling 16 different spreadsheets from different years, cleaning things when HR has decided to change the way that they've collected data. And so for people who have done data cleaning before, this is probably the largest ever data cleaning project that I've done. And so I say this is all publicly available, but I mean, I'll give anyone the data file that I've got, but there's nowhere that you can go to the Metro website and get what I have to do this. It'll take you, you know, a full-time job of a couple months.
So I will say, ideas, I mean, Ashley was asking this, I think, Dave, ideas of how we get the word out. This is gonna be public. This report comes out, it's the commission's report. It's beautiful. It's gonna be a wonderful thing that we can share digitally and I think even print-wise. So yes, you can, this will not be hidden under a bookshelf. The other thing is, how do we get the word out? So one thing that comes to mind is a panel discussion that we get, you know, people to know about, whether it's during one of our meetings or whether it's a separate one that's a public meeting where we have people come talk about it. I think we get to splash as much as we want. It's been a long time since the last one, and it obviously made a huge impact. And the other thing that comes to mind, actually, I just thought about this, is do you remember that report when you and I were commissioners that Ashford Hughes and folks did, which talked about white male managers? Like, actually, I think you did this here, where it shows that the level of leadership and what that's comprised of, that was really important in terms of, and it also plays into many of the complaints that we get, but, you know, I guess you show the salary level, but maybe just talking, it was something like 90% of management was white male. That's I don't know if you have that, but
Well, we extracted, because I was, and there's not a graph for this, but Metro employees making 100 grand or more is 761 of them. 500 are men, 261 are women. 411 are white men, 185 are white women, 74 are black men, 64 are black women, 5 are Hispanic men, and 3 are Hispanic women, out of a total of 761 Metro employees who are non-elected officials who make 100,000 or more. So
Yeah.
that's kind of,
That's great.
yeah.
Yeah, and we can do that versus the population and Davis County and give some perspective. So that's wonderful. Thank you guys so much for doing that.
Well, and again, I just want to throw all that over to
Yeah.
Ashley, who ever since she's come on, she's been working
Yes.
on and on and on and on.
It's not been a lot of time at all. It's not even been 6 months, I don't know. So that's incredible. And we didn't even know you were doing this. We thought you were doing all the other things that we see you do. So thank you. And data cleaning it is the Lord's work, really. It's so hard. So thank you
And
for
I
doing
do not want to learn.
Yeah, it's just, and the attention to detail in your eyes start to come together. It's really awful. Okay. Yes, sorry, Pratik.
I've also cleaned data. It sucks, and I really appreciate everything that you're doing through it. I think things that I have questions about, which, like, if you're able to, let's, like, try and dig into it, but if not, you know, obviously, you can only work with the data you have. But I would be interested to talk to HR about, like when we say black, you know, I think that there's an assumption that's African-American when there are black immigrants, and I don't want to, you know, sell Metro short if we're hiring, you know, black immigrants in a space, you know, making sure that people are classified properly. I think that's one. I also think that, like, just like Middle Eastern wasn't represented in that chart. Does that mean there are 0 Kurdish employees in the city of Nashville that we know there's a giant Kurdish population? Feels like a discrepancy. And so just like, I think a lot of those communities are sometimes identified as white. And so I don't want to sell Metro short on like a diverse, you know, it might be more diverse than it seems on the chart because of the box that race is, you know, classified as. And so wherever you can, you know, try and get that specific, feel free. But just something for us to think about before we just say like, oh, there's all these people that are classified as white when it might be actually more diverse than we think it is, so.
Yeah, but we can only count it the way they count it.
I feel you. And it's the same thing as, you know, gender as well, right? Like, I get it, and I feel that, but just wanting to make sure that we know that that variable is in there and just naming that.
As an Iranian, they don't have a spot for us, so we always have to choose white. Yeah, they just, so I don't know, it's hard. Yes, we. Did you want to say something?
No.
I do want to say, I know I did this, but I do want to give a shout out. Like the number at 2021, I think was it 2021 or 2020? The numbers were getting better, not in terms of salary. That's something we really need to look at. That's pretty brutal. But just in terms of like some of the hiring, the numbers were starting to look really much
That's
better.
that's one of the primary findings is that it has gotten better
Yeah.
over time. That's the trend, that it is getting better. Every way you move it and count it, it shows that it is getting better over time. And as we look at the way in which the inclusivics have been done, and I think Ashley mentioned it a little bit, is long-term employees, folk who've been here the longest, is where I think the greatest discrepancies are. Looking at the last 8 years, it's getting better to where the pay discrepancy between men and women right now, it's almost dead even right now. But then when you look at all the numbers of the 10,000 employees, it shows that there's this disparity with pay between male and female. But if you look at it, and we want to be fair, and we want to use the numbers in the way the numbers are, and it has gotten better in the short term, which is a plus.
I think that gets to be acknowledged, yes.
I hear you saying this about 2021, but we were in the middle of COVID. We were hired anybody during 2021. So,
No, they were.
So that's an asterisk beside that year would be an asterisk beside that year to me, because at that time, we were also having a number of people that are not coming to work as well. So the increase in hiring, and I'm speaking that as a business owner, the increase in hiring was across the board for everyone because the need was so great to get bodies in places. So that's great that that number increased, but we also need to be mindful of what was happening during 2021. So just thought we, have that as context.
Awesome. Thanks for putting that one back up. That's the one I was referring to. Okay, in the interest of time, I'm going to move forward if that's cool with everybody. Thank you all for the discussion and the questions. And I think this will continue until we publish it and make other moves on it. So please keep your mind on it. Okay, the next thing we want to talk about is Amy's letter. So I hope everyone's read it. And I don't think we're gonna read, well, we could read the whole thing. But this is really a first for me, being on the commission. We've never talked about sort of things that are statewide issues that necessarily aren't like Nashville policy, but very important nevertheless. And so fully welcome her discussing this with us today. Thank you.
Well, I am so grateful for this opportunity to talk to everyone here. I don't take that for granted. It's an honor to get an opportunity to voice my affirmation of friends that have become family. And I want to give you a quick context of where I'm coming from. In 1997, I started working for an endocrinologist. And so that's some history of working with this population who was running underground, coming from state to acquire care, had been harassed and bullied, had experiences that were horrific. And so then I started taking care of in the ICU some of the first patients that came in to receive care for gender-affirming surgeries. This was radical at that time. And my love for this population just grew and grew as I understood that these are sisters and brothers of ours, and they've already collectively suffered a tremendous loss of having dignity, respect, and rights in this community. What I'm asking for today from us, my specific ask, is that we take an opportunity not to start anything new, but just to reaffirm what we had already been doing and working with our neighbors and brothers and siblings and sisters to continue to provide the care that we're providing for them, for gender affirming care for our youth, our trans youth in the city. If you haven't had a chance to read this, it's a 2-minute read. I can do it. But I really wanted to give an opportunity. I'll read it quickly. And I wanted to give an opportunity for questions because not everybody has been working with this population since 1997. And not everybody has friends that have become family in this population. So I'm representing children that I know not only by name, but I know their heart. And I know that this is affecting their body, mind, and spirit. So that's why I felt that they're my audience and they're worth the discomfort of me bringing this before everybody today. So I unapologetically do that, and I ask for your attention while I read this, okay? So One City for All People is the commission's theme here, and it guides our advocacy for the Metro Human Relations Commission, MHRC. As such, we support Nashville's transgender youth access to health care. We see the critical need for healthcare providers to continue offering transgender youth access to gender-affirming care. Currently, SB1, HB1 by Senator Johnson and Representative Lamberth bans gender-affirming care for youth. Also, SB3 and HB9 by Senator Johnson and Representative Todd make it possible for police to arrest transgender individuals performing or busking in drag. Followed by SB5 by Senator Bowling, which is another bill banning gender-affirming care for youth. Many global data analyses and local experts highlight the critical need for gender-affirming care of transgender youth. Policymakers can help build a healthier population by promoting equality of care for transgender youth. Current research demonstrates policies that discriminate against transgender people exacerbate mental and health problems. Transgender youth are already a vulnerable group, and laws that make it more difficult for them to receive gender-affirming care isolate them even further. These are significant issues, but they can be addressed by ensuring that healthcare policies and practices are compassionate. According to the 2015 U.S. Transgender Survey from the Tennessee State Report, 53% of kindergarten to 12th grade transgender youth in Tennessee experience verbal harassment, 22% experience physical assault, and 10% experience sexual assault. Nashville data shows that the LGBTQIA youth homelessness, as 15% of homeless youth cited conflicts around gender identity or sexual orientation, as the local survey showed, as related to their homelessness. MHRC supports Nashville and Davidson County transgender and gender diverse youth and affirms the local advocacy efforts on behalf of transgender youth at Nashville Launchpad, Oasis Center, Tennessee Equality Project, PFLAG, Glendale United Methodist Church, First Unitarian Universalist Church, and the Clinic for Transgender Health at Vanderbilt, and countless others. MHRC urges lawmakers to oppose laws that limit healthcare options for our gender diverse youth. And this statement cites research showing transgender youth without gender-affirming care can have an increased risk for suicide, followed by a reduced suicide risk associated with receiving gender-affirming care. We join thousands of healthcare providers in efforts, including the American Academy of Pediatrics and the American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry. And that is the statement that I have proposed tonight. And I really do welcome the difficult conversation around this, and I would love to know more about your thoughts on adopting this statement through MHRC, mostly as a way and a means to show support for our already marginalized youth in the trans community here in Nashville. Thanks.
So, first of all, thank you. Totally support. I noticed that you did some editing while you were reading, and there were some of the, just copy editing things. So have you already done those things in here? So I would just recommend that you go back through, because just there were some small things. Like
Sure.
in one place you said exacerbate mental and health problems. I think you might have meant mental, emotional, and physical. I don't know. So I would add those things. Just go back and edit. One question I did have, and it may not, well, one question I did have is, based on my own understanding, most of these groups that you mentioned, I'm familiar with or been a part of, and I want to make sure that we're inclusive of any organizations that serve non-white transgender youth. Many times, in my own experience, when we start talking about the LGBTQI community, and particularly transgender folks, that we're talking a lot about white folks, and that there are a lot of people of color who fall through the cracks. So I just want to make sure. I think there are data to show that, especially when it comes to physical assault and harassment, that young people of color experience that at higher levels. So just want to raise that awareness. And then, so I just want to raise that, because too many times in this community, when we start talking about LGBTQIA, it's white folks. And there is a whole culture, cultures of people who are not included in that conversation. And finally, I would say you use the word equality of care. I think I might look at other wording to say that whatever care is needed, but sometimes equality is used to say the same, if we get the same care. And sometimes transgender folks need a different kind of care. So I would just raise that as a concern to me, equitable care, or, whatever care is needed. That word equality sometimes, or equal, gets some people misuse that word. But those were the ones that I wanted to raise, and I really, really, really appreciate this. This is very helpful, I think.
I would love an opportunity, Deaconess, to respond to I have done some of my own personal research data. You are exactly right. The diversity portion of our trans community has experienced much more loss in protection of privileges, of being able to have human dignity, having spaces of safety. However, for this particular letter, I had to do it concisely, quickly, and I wholeheartedly wanted to make this statement as quickly and appropriately as I possibly could get it out, because this legislation is coming down the pike so rapidly. And I really appreciate what you had to say about it, and wholeheartedly agree with everything that you said. Pratik.
Yeah, I just wanted to say the same thing of like, this is a fast-moving timeline. Legislative session comes tomorrow, and, I think that our state legislators, this will be a priority of a bill for those sponsors to try and push through. I think the thing, when it comes to the letter semantics and words, that's not my wheelhouse. I think that there are people who are better suited here. I think the thing that I want to think about, first off, is that I want to preface by saying that I support that we send this letter. What I would like to do is also, I would like to make sure that MHRC is prepped for backlash from the state. We just saw today that because the council didn't, take the Republican National Convention, whatever, they're cutting the council in half, they're passing a bill. So I think that it's safe to say that the state legislature has some petty folks. And so we should just prepare ourselves for that pettiness. And whether that is, I think things that come to mind for me are like preparing ourselves for hate speech coming our way, coming to the office's way, or, being able to be ready for state legislators, from other cities or counties to try and use this as a pedestal to rile up their base. And then the last thing I would say is that I would love to make sure that any of the state legislators that represent Davidson County, even if it's just a small piece, they should have this in their hands too. Just so when they are able to when they are debating in state legislature, that they have the same facts and everything, and that we give them some ammunition, for lack of a better word. I hate using the kind of militarized, but yeah, but that's kind of, those are my thoughts on it.
I love those thoughts, Pratik, and I have an arsenal of information. And here's the thing, I'm not going to change anyone from a piece of paper. I'm sitting here today to affirm my friends that have become family and say that if we're going to be backlashed against something because we stand up for you, not only do we see you, but we feel a fraction of what you have experienced. And that is worth it to me.
Sorry, just to respond, I'm behind it. I want to be very clear.
No, I hear
but
that, yeah.
From a safety perspective, this is something to think about, so.
Good word.
Yeah, go for it.
Your mic is not working. I know they said it is,
Punch
but
it one
it's
more
not.
time. Punch it one time and then talk into it.
Try it now.
That button on the right-hand side.
Yeah.
All right. Stereo sound now.
Thank you again. Very well done, very thoughtful, and thank you for the effort and the heartfelt affirmation, again, for people who deserve this advocacy. I just had a question.
Sure.
I'm looking at the second paragraph and looking at the second sentence, actually third. So it mentions,
Oh, you're talking about busking?
well, I actually Googled it, so I know what busking means, because I did know
I
that.
just learned today.
Yeah, same. But I was just wondering, so in terms of the restrictions against transgender individuals performing or busking in drag, that's not specific to youth though, right? So that's the entire population?
So again, making this as concise as I could, there are limitless pages related to this. And so I know words matter. And so what the point of this is, my understanding, the point of that is that no public performances can be made because it can be considered an infringement on the youth's ability to make a decision on watching those things. I could say a lot of things that are publicly allowed that I have concerns about. But again, I think that I just wanted to make that knowledge, public knowledge, that was coming down the pike. So great question.
Thank you.
Did I answer that?
You did. I was
Okay.
just wondering, it looked like the other ones that you gave as examples were specific to youth, where this one is just broader.
Good question.
Yeah, thank you again for writing this letter. I think was just going to add that maybe it might even be helpful to add maybe a couple of sentences, maybe asking, the mayor and like the council, like, a statement of support, and maybe even like an ask about like, making sure that, they can address these bills in whatever capacity, whether it's, you can't really stop the Tennessee State Legislature from, or you can, not to say that, but, they can barrel, these things through, but, it's important that our city and our city government can be forceful in, stopping, these harmful bills and rhetoric. So like maybe some sort of like sanctuary-esque kind of ask or whatever, or a resolution, I think would be great.
Thanks, Kosar. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
All I was going to say is, I know this is coming down the pike tomorrow, and I'm wondering if we do come to consensus today, or can come to something that sounds like consensus where we can put this out, we could always do an addendum follow-up letter with an ask. And I think ultimately, the biggest piece that I forgot to share is the youth are not receiving their gender affirming care right now. That's not happening. And so that throws the urgency in there. So I like the idea of doing an ask.
I will just, my devil's advocate as I'm thinking about this, and dealing not as much as some of us with the legislator, but somewhat. Couple things. I think in terms of Nashville, what can we do? What are we trying to say? The main message is we are with you, youth.
Yes.
And know that this public body is with you.
Yes.
I do think that we may not even be as creative as our legislators in how they can come respond to this. Little did I know that because we didn't do the RNC, we would get a bill that would decrease our council by 20 people. So there could be a wide variety of things that
Sure.
they are preemptive. They love to preempt Nashville. So we say we want to have a party, they pass a bill that says no parties for the MHRC. We say we want to have a panel discussion. That's how they work. Not that they're going to spend that much time on us. So I'm just, a couple things, but I hear the urgency, so I'm happy for this to not be considered. I'm going to not even believe in myself by saying this, but would it be useful if this is not about really trying to change the policy, but more about affirming vocally, publicly, not live, but tomorrow, would it be useful to remove the stuff about the bills and talk about we stand with trans youth? And then also talk about the context. Sorry, I'm pointing to him because he informed us that Vanderbilt was forced to stop their youth affirming care by the governor. So saying something about that, like the urgency, yes, these people are passing their bills and love all the national news around that, and they're gonna try to win things in their base for that. I'm just thinking strategically, let's talk about getting care for kids in Nashville.
I think I can respond to
That
that.
complicates things, so I'm ready for that not to
No,
also be-
I wholeheartely agree. I think getting the information out there that is coming down the pike is helpful. But you know what? I'm wholeheartedly agreeing with you that we can remove that, because I want to be real too. I took 1,000 pages and narrowed it down into 3 sentences. So, I mean, those words can be twisted, used, removed, redacted to say whatever, is needed. So if that's going to be the point of contention, the thing that needs to shine is that we support our trans youth and not so much the folks that are putting the bills. So I'm wholeheartedly agreeing with the, removal of that mention, if that's going to be a distractor, because again, the main message is support. So.
I have a question. Whenever it's my turn.
I wanted to.
As a member of the community, there's a couple of things I wanted to say. Like, one, the letter is amazing. Two, there was a question that I think Ms. Garlinda had about the equitable language, and is that a distraction? The word that has been used in the medical field oftentimes, but also in trans communities and spaces, for allyship and moments of allyship, like this one and this conversation included, is medically necessary.
Okay.
So medically necessary, affirming care, gender affirming care. Because that the dispute, the opposite side likes to say that these that these surgeries or that
Yes.
hormonal treatment and care and therapy and case management and the whole 9 yards that involves gender affirming care for anybody at any age, is that this entire thing is medically unnecessary. But if you were to look at WPATH, the World Professionals Association for Transgender Health, and you look at, which would be another great folk to mention as a part of a global organization that actually represents physicians from across the world who have put together, who only work on transgender healthcare, right? Who focus and hone in on whether that's endocrinology or that's pediatrics or that's adult care. So WPATH is a great organization to also throw in there. I was also gonna say, to your point about how this conversation and the organizations that are mentioned specifically to Nashville, and then this will circle back around to my last point that you just made about legislation, is that relevant for this letter? Nashville, it's important to mention organizations like My House. My House has been a space for transgender. I just realized this as a case manager coming from that field myself. My House has been a crucial space for trans women of color and transgender youth specifically. Even though My House can only serve 18 years or older, they have been serving that 18 to 24-year-old space because of the grants that they have been provided by the state.
Gotcha.
To specifically, while they focus on HIV prevention work and HIV work specifically, My House has been a crucial space because they have formed a transgender support group. So spaces like My House, there's also groups, I would informally mention the creation and the spaces of transgender support groups, because there's so many across the city that are in Nashville and that I can't name, because by naming them, we're also outing people, right?
Right.
And so it's a cautious of.
Same thing
we
with
can-
me sharing stories,
we can
yes.
we can say that there are transgender support groups who are also in alignment with this letter, right? So I think it's always important to name who the allies are, but also as a trans person of color, I do gotta name that this conversation, like oftentimes it's like, well, I just don't wanna name the white organizations who are throwing down or showing up for trans people. I wanna name the Black and brown organizations who are present for trans people. And so, because I live at that intersection. And so My House came to mind specifically.
I'm trying to edit as we're talking in case that's helpful.
And then this circles back around to the conversation that you just made, the point, devil's advocate point. I think it's strong to name the bills that are happening, the SB blah, blah, blahs and the blah, blah, blahs, name it specifically. I think there can be a separate debate around whether the names of the people who are trying to attempt to pass the bills should be named or not, because that's gonna get into the rhetoric.
I thought about that
of
too.
The arguments of the validity of the statement or whatever. But it is important to name the bills because that's part of the education that this letter is doing, right? And that's part of the political power that this letter has, especially coming from MHRC. So I wouldn't remove the bills, naming them themselves, because the public is still, even though this is starting and there's urgency because of the legislature opening up tomorrow, et cetera, the bills are still something that even in the community, I'm having to explain to cisgender people and allies that these bills are happening and what they're targeting. And they're not just targeting transgender youth, they're also targeting transgender adults. And so that bill, I think you mentioned something about drag queens, or one of them mentions busking and all that. Busking is a form that younger trans people like search as a means of like economic opportunity in downtown Nashville to like perform out in the street and like as drag queens or drag men, or drag whatever, right, in drag. And so it's like, there's also this conflation that bill is conflating trans people with drag people, like people in drag. So don't even get me started about the like, let's iron out the facts that not everybody who's trans does drag and not everybody who's into drag is trans. So that's a nuanced conversation to have, but that bill just like throws everybody in there.
Okay, so just, RJ, I wanted to kind of, no, I want to get this. So what I've done is I've edited it to remove the names of the bill's sponsors, but I've kept the bills in, and again, with full acknowledgement that any of the words can be, drawn out semantically, questioned, but that is the information that I understand. And did I get that right?
Yes.
And then I've added in the support for My House. I've added their link in there as well.
You've got a question.
Okay, it's back on. I love everything that's being said. I do think removing the names is probably maybe a less aggressive way to respond, but still keeping the names of the bills. Davey, this question is for you. What has this commission in the past made similar statements in response to similar legislation? And has there been any backlash at all? Because just my 2 cents, I'm not thinking this is going to be on the radar of many Republican legislators. But I'm curious to know if there has been an issue in the past or no issue at all.
Sometimes we've gotten backlash. We got a little backlash over the calling for the police chief, the previous police chief, to be fired. But that came kind of within Metro, that people felt like maybe we were overstepping. But you are the commissioners, you're duly appointed, and as long as you can stand the heat and the fire, I'm good to go. I'm in favor of calling a thing a thing. There would not be HB1 without Johnson and Lambert. So I'm not against that. And my thing has nothing to do with the consideration of sexuality, gender identity, or anything. My thing is these are kids.
Yep.
And they have been used as political pawns, and that some trans kid somewhere hears a news story of grown people who are othering them in such mean, cruel ways that's my opposition to all of this. Yeah, there may be a larger discussion about other things, but these are children whose parents have agreed that this care is medically necessary for their children. And all of a sudden, this group of folk publicly attack these children in ways that, I don't know, I just think is inhumane, and it's traumatic to them. They already feel different in social spaces, and to have they are a public discussion, I could not imagine that at all. So as long as y'all protect us from whatever fire that is, I say light it up.
I would like to say really quickly, I did speak to my family about this and my kids and my husband, and I said, this is what, I'm going to do. And they said, light it up. So.
Comment I want to make.
Sure.
I hear you, and then when you first, I want us to make sure our lane is our lane. So when you get fired up, I know what fire suit to put on. You have in the opening statement, you have one city for all people is our theme. What I think we should also, and not focus on the theme, but the mission of the Metro Human Relations Commission. And the mission is to protect and promote the personal dignity, peace, safety, security, health, and general welfare of all people in Nashville and Davidson County. So if we're living out our mission and doing our duties as commissioners, that is much more, it ties in more so to me than the theme, but that we are in our lane and that we are doing the work that we were called to do. So I just
I
wanted to give
wholeheartedly
that
agree. I was trying to keep the document to a edited minimum.
Well, when we want that fire retardant, we want to start out strong. with
Yeah, we
that.
can do
So,
that. If that's what
so.
you guys want, I'll edit it in right now.
That beginning and to tie it in with, therefore, this must include transgender youth.
Okay, can do it.
Because
I just
it's-
emailed you the edited document. I will email it again.
I have just one question.
Oh, hold on 1 minute. Derek is doing his,
Legal. this is really great that, you know, this bill was brought to our attention. But I was wondering, like, you know, this is something that could be expanded to, just because this isn't just going to be the only, like, you know, trans bill. There are going to be, you know, other anti-trans bills that are going to be introduced, you know, anti-immigrant, et cetera. And I know, you know, I don't know if this is our lane specifically, but like, a lot of these bills are antithetical to the ideals of this commission and will affect us if, you know, they're enacted in some kind of way. So I think, I don't know if it'd be helpful to like maybe be briefed, you know, with this legislative cycle, like some of the bills that could potentially harm, you know, our community members and marginalized communities, but also like walking that fine line of like making sure that, you know, we're a public commission and we're not, you know, a C4 organization or, you know, or whatnot. But just how, yeah, that was just a question.
I appreciate that. So that is the bigger issue at hand that I got my eye on right now. If I'm honest with you, I do love this letter. I realize I did not start out saying that. I do love it and I totally support it. So some of us who work on the state side on other work, the truth is there are a ton of bills that are against our mission coming down the pike. A ton. I don't know. Like, I know of, I think 30 that are awful in terms of personal dignity of Nashvillians. So I'm really glad you brought that up because I think we're going to take a vote on this statement and that's going to go. And thank you so much for creating that. But we do have to pay attention to what we're trying to do here, which is impact and evaluate Metro, you know, the city, the Davidson County, for its ability to, you know, forward personal dignity of Nashvillians. And so does Tennessee state law impact that? Oh, hell yeah. Are we going to how are we going to interact with that? We have not. So the commissioner had asked, had we done anything like this before? In my duration, I think of 3 year plus, I don't even know how many. We've never done anything at the state level, and Pratik's nodding. Yeah, we've never done anything at the state level. We've stayed in our Nashville lane. And before we decide anything about that, I would like for us to just consider that. I think they're going to come out with all these things tomorrow, and then it basically wraps up by April. So we have like 3 meetings where this is ongoing. And I want y'all to know that it is ongoing. Like, this is not the only chance to come out on stuff. We were talking about stuff the whole time, and except when you're trying to advocate for a bill, and there are some that we know, like you said, that are winnable or mitigatable, and some that are, you know, lost causes. So if we're trying to get on that schedule, yes, we should move faster. Maybe that's an XCOM meeting where we could all attend. But I am trying to think about, how do you pick? And is it a broader statement and those types of things? Yes, so, sorry, go ahead, Pratik.
I think that the only other questions that I have, so first thing is that I want to just be very clear that this bill, if I'm not mistaken, and I do not know a lobbyist or who's working on this bill, whatever, but if things are going the way that I have seen in the state before, should go through a subcommittee, a committee, like there's a process. Yeah. So the things that, you know, I want to make sure that it is urgent that we get this done, but it's not like we're on a 24-hour clock. Right. So I want to name that. I think the other thing that I want to make sure is that this letter doesn't get in the way of any advocacy groups that are fighting against this bill. So I guess my question is, have you talked to anybody that is doing any advocacy work, and would this like help or hurt their strategy? I would imagine, looking at this letter, that it would probably help them, but I'm going to ask just in case.
So, Pratik, I'm going to answer that the best way I can.
Sure.
I've spoken with the majority of the folks that I've named here and especially, particularly, those that are working with the Tennessee Equality Project. And so I know that this was seen by an employee for them, not necessarily affirmed by them as a whole, but I was asked, and they were grateful. And so was Glendale United Methodist, grateful that I'm bringing this before to add on to the advocacy efforts being done.
I think that for me, particularly, if someone from Tennessee Equality Project has seen it and has said that it would help their strategy, which I have not, I've seen them the most in the state legislature on this issue, then I feel comfortable, making the motion and moving this forward, but it's just making sure that it's named that,
Just to be clear,
sure,
an individual from
an
there.
individual, okay.
Yes, so I just want to be very clear. It
Got it.
wasn't done at an organizational level.
Okay. That's
But
all.
yes, it was encouraged for me to be able to bring this up.
Great.
This question might have already been answered. I apologize, I had to step out for work. But my question is, what is the fear of the opposing side? What is the statement being made to want to stop the care of the youth? I know it's a political.
They think we're changing the kids. Sorry, go ahead.
You're not Mike, yeah.
The short term is child mutilation. That's the opposing argument.
That's what I thought it was, but Dr. Charlton was sharing something different with me on what was actually happening.
So let me hear
I thought
your.
that was the fear, but
Let
you were
me,
saying
let
that-
me, okay, so we got two things going on though.
Okay.
We've got, the main thing I want to bring in is this letter is related to affirming our trans youth. And that's the main goal of this letter. The legislation is talking about a lot of different things related to gender affirming care, which can be hormonal treatment. It can be everything up to surgical treatment, but again, it's all deemed medically necessary.
She's asking about what are they saying is wrong with that and why are they opposing it? She wants to know the reason that they're giving. And I think,
So there is one, okay, again, now I feel like I'm getting into semantics with their argument, and I want to be really careful because I don't want to feed that flame. But there is one non-peer-reviewed article that's being cited out of Europe that says that some trans adults had come back and said that they regretted having the surgery. I have probably close to 350 peer-reviewed articles that contradict that one article. And so that's where, you can pull anything. And I don't know why someone would do this to a child and take away their care. And I can't pretend to know that, but I do want to support the kids. Does that make sense? I can't speak to their missions and motives.
The opposition to the other one, aside from mutilation that I've heard from, is also that they're, saying stuff like, stuff that's scientifically and medically inaccurate. So they're saying that medical transition for transgender youth is irreversible, meaning that these are permanent changes that you're doing to children, when those are not the facts of what gender affirming care for transgender youth even looks like. There's puberty blockers, which they're not even mentioning. Puberty blockers blocks. It doesn't, it blocks, it can stop or prevent puberty from processing forward, but those are reversible changes. So the argument is, how would a child know? How does my child know? How do they know so young that they are transgender, that they say, I've been raising them as a girl, for example, now they're telling me they're a boy. How can I trust that if, tomorrow they're gonna tell me they like pizza, but they no longer like pepperoni, now they like sausage? They're kind of making that kind of argument, and those type of parallels of children are so undecisive, how do they know about this gender thing that's constrictive? When in reality, gender's not static, and we all know that given how we live into our embodiment anyways, whether or not you're transgender or not. So, because not every woman is the same and not every man is the same. Does that make sense?
I just want to make sure I answered your question without giving more attention where does that make sense?
It does, but primarily, I've listened to this and I've heard both sides, but it seemed so abrupt to me that they came in to stop the care. I just wanted to make sure I wasn't missing some other piece or part to why this was happening so quickly.
Oh, I think you might not have heard RJ. It was a governor's order.
I love this discussion. Partially because it'll be recorded and people can learn from it. So I really, really love the details, and I'm cognizant of everybody's time. So there's a couple of things that need to happen. One, I think we need to vote to approve the statement and let that go live. And we will not see a draft of it after this. We will not get to do a back and forth of it. This has been our deliberation, and I want to actually comment on that deliberation as well. From the guidance we've gotten from legal, this is the way that these statements get to be written, is live like this and in no other really way. So while it feels like it's drawn out sometimes and there's just like talking about crossing T's and dotting I's, this is basically the only way this gets to happen. And then afterwards, nothing gets to happen. So this was a great example of that. I really want to commend both Commissioner Charlton for drafting it, giving it to staff, and staff sending it to y'all before we come here so that we're ready to have this deliberation, because now after much thinking and thought and processing, this is the way it happens. So, and then we kind of let it fly upon our decision to let it fly. Yes, Pratik.
Oh, I was gonna make a motion.
Okay, great. So I just wanted y'all to know that that's the process. So if you're like having a thought about something, immigrant rights, whatever it is, get that draft over to Davey, get Davey to send that out before a meeting, and let's nip it in the bud quickly. We meet once a month, council's once every 2 weeks. Okay, so we can't turn things around. We just really cannot turn. We learned that in the statement, in the stadium letter. We cannot, we thought we had till the end of January, we didn't. We had till December, whatever, right before the holidays. And it was really hard to do anything in that pace. So this is how this works. And get us we got to do the work before the meeting, basically. Have your deadlines ready, know when your bills or whatever are ready. The other thing I want to say is I do want to say that I don't know how to say this because I live in both worlds and I'm passionate about both worlds, but I do want to keep us focused on what we can change and impact. And we can impact council, we can impact the mayor's office, we can impact Metro's processes and procedures like the inclusivics report. So as we're offering up statements and letters and stuff like that in the next very, very difficult legislative season, please keep that in mind, okay? Yes, Pratik.
So I'm just gonna make a motion, but real quick before I make the motion, I wanna name that as commissioners, while David did say like, ready to light it up, ready to take the fire, it is our role to make sure that we're protecting not only the folks that we're serving, but also ourselves and the staff. Davey has volunteered to put on the fire suit. So that is why I'm making this motion, as well as, you know, the passion and everything in this conversation. So I'm making a motion for the MHRC to adopt this letter with the caveats that there could potentially be further action later down the road or things like that, as we discussed. Yeah, and that is it. Sorry, just had to collect my thoughts.
It's a motion to pass this letter.
Second.
No caveats. Second, thank you. Any,
Well,
yes.
Did you want to?
You had a question.
Sorry,
I wanted to
sorry.
tell you, I added what you had asked me to add in as our Metro mission statement is the very first sentence. So I was just going to read that so everybody's on the same page on what we changed. Yes.
Well, I would suggest an easier motion would be that we could approve the letter with necessary edits for clarity. Without changing the letter, but there's, you know, we got to put it on letterhead. She just added another statement, but the gist of the letter wouldn't change.
So I make the motion that we would, can you repeat what you said?
With necessary edits to make it
That we-
publishable.
Necessary edits.
Yes, with the necessary edits, that we make that motion. My brain's not working right now, but
Second.
thank you.
Any abstentions or noes? Fabulous. Then the motion so moves.
Wow.
Excellent work. Okay, I don't know, we have like 100 things here. Do we want to pick which one, or do we want to?
These won't take long at all.
Okay, go.
I'll shoot through them.
Go.
The staff and hiring updates, you just heard from RJ Robles, who is also the new member to our staff, who'll be doing the Title VI compliance. And we are interviewing folk for the community engagement position. We have offered the administrative position to a person, so we're just waiting on that. Hopefully in the next 6 weeks or so, we'll be up to 6 staff. The license plate readers, we're just monitoring what that 6-month pilot will look like. And that'll be the last time that'll be on the agenda.
It got approved too, just
Yeah.
to say.
Yeah, so that got approved. The last Tuesday, legislation changing the way commissioners are appointed to 11 boards and commissions, BL 22-1528 passed, meaning that 11 boards and commissions, this one included, the mayor will appoint 10, and the community will appoint the other 7. I think that's huge. I think that is DEI work on the highest level of the mayor power sharing, and there was not any consultation from the mayor's office. So I'm grateful to the mayor's office that this piece of legislation passed that will allow more community members to be part of, that the community will get to pick community members to serve on 11 boards and commissions. The East Bank letter, when we last met on the 5th, we were operating under the assumption that the non-binding resolution would be deferred until after the holidays. That did not happen. It was voted on December 19th. And prior to that, we had a couple of executive committee meetings to craft the letter. And on the 19th, when it was clear that it was not going to be deferred that night, I released the letter. The letter was to have come back to this body for approval. I understand that that was not the process, but if we had not weighed in, the next day, the 2 executive committee meetings and all the labor that folks put in to putting this letter together would not have happened, and MHRC's intent would not have been included in the conversation. I say that to say, not to excuse that there was a violation of your voted upon process.
So that's just an FYI of what happened and has informed how we want to do this moving forward. So that's what my whole spiel was about before this. So basically, we need to be ahead of the game. Council meets every 2 weeks, we meet once a month. So if something's coming down the pike, you basically have to have our eye on it before that. Okay, and then anything else? MHRC?
The last thing would be the strategic planning, and that's an ongoing thing that we've had a couple of executive committee meetings. Staff is continuing to put together a strategic plan, and we'll host another executive committee meeting as we move toward trying to narrow down what our work is going to be for the next year, next 3 years, and next 5 years.
Fabulous. And on that, we can adjourn if I can get a motion to adjourn.
I think you had a question.
Oh, do we have a question? I'm sorry.
You guys have voted, but I would like for us to be able to get an addendum or something from these organizations that are mentioning here, that they are supporting what we're supporting, that they are supporting, and some kind of way to have that as documentation for the letter after the fact, if that makes sense.
They may not endorse the letter. There's a specific definition, you know, where they're like,
Yeah.
we will sign on, but we can let them know of it. Is that
Something.
okay?
Okay.
Commissioner, could I ask the question, why is that necessary? When the commission can speak on whatever the commission wants to speak on, right, wrong, or indifferent? I'm just,
But I think the way
just for clarity.
I just think the way it's positioned is if that we are, that these groups are being named. I know my name has been put in some things that I didn't even know anything about it. And I'm like, well, when did that happen? So I just think out of respect, because if it's gonna be blowback, they're gonna get blowback, and they could say, well, I didn't even know anything about that. So out of,
That's an excellent point, because some are going to be doing advocacy and some are just providing services.
Yeah,
And so they
right.
might not want to be on any
Right.
others. Yeah.
Motion to adjourn.
And do we have a second already?
Well, you didn't,
I know.
that was just
So
public
that means
comment.
that,
so are you asking for,
I want that public comments, that if that can be provided, I know that we voted, but if that could be provided to us or something in some kind of way.
well, I would think that we would have to do a motion. Yeah, because the letter has already been
Yeah.
approved.
Okay.
so this is a motion to approve the letter.
No, the letter is approved.
Yeah, just,
Okay, an addendum to consult the organizations prior to publishing the letter. Or at any point.
just say any point.
At
I
any
just
point.
think-
Just
yeah.
let them know that this letter has gone out.
Yeah.
Informing, okay, thank you. So that's the motion.
Approved?
Or is
No,
it
you have
a
to make the
second?
motion, I'm not
Oh,
making it.
I have to make it?
Yeah, or someone
Somebody.
needs to make it.
Make the motion.
I would like to make a motion that the agencies that are mentioned, if we could get some type of statement or approval or information back from them.
Or acknowledgement.
Acknowledgement,
Yeah,
it's
they're
a-
all different, so.
okay.
We gotta be
Okay.
specific. How about just
Okay.
informing them that they're in the letter?
I would like to make a motion that the agencies that were mentioned in your letter be informed that their names were mentioned in
Great.
your letter.
Second.
Any against, or abstentions? Okay, motion so moves.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Any against, abstentions? Meeting's adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you all for bearing with us 30 minutes.